Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Positive Activities Careers Pick and Mix. In this session, I'm delighted to welcome some representatives from the RIBA. We've got Kate and Bryony in the session this afternoon, and they're going to tell us a little bit more about the Royal Institute of British Architects, about what they do there, and also some more information about the sorts of skills required to get into architecture. They're also going to take us a little bit further. They're going to be doing an activity with us as well. So this is a little bit longer than some of our other pick and mix sessions because we're going to be getting to grips with some specific skills that will stand you in good stead if you are looking to get involved in the world of architecture at any level. So without further ado, thank you so much to both of you. Over to you.
Thanks, Ellen. So yeah, a little bit about us. We are from the Royal Institute of British Architects, and you might have seen the logo around on the sides of buildings and things, but you might not know exactly what we do. We're actually a membership organisation for architects. So we look after architects and we look after architecture to make sure it's the best it can be, and share the importance of good design. We've got a couple of questions at the bottom here for you to think about. Are you a member of any membership organisations yourself? And why do you think it's important for architects to be a member of the RIBA? Why is it important to them to be part of this kind of club? Can I have the next slide, please, Bryony? Thank you. We are also a museum of architecture with over 4 million collection items. So when I say collection items, I mean things like books, as you can see in the pictures, but also models, paintings, drawings, and portfolios from architects who've passed on their kind of studio worth of work to us. So as part of the Museum of Architecture work, we help the public, so that's you, but also older people, university students and families to explore and understand architecture. We work in schools across the UK, including in Norwich, and we also help set up work experience placements. So we can talk about that later if that's something you're interested in following up with. The question you probably all know the answer to, but this is a question for you to think about, is what is architecture? What are we talking about when we talk about architecture? Now we've got a dictionary definition here, which might be what you're saying. Let's see if it matches. So the dictionary says that it's the art and practice of designing and making buildings, but we would argue that it's a lot more than that. It's a much bigger field than that, than just designing and drawing buildings. It uses a lot more skills, and that's something we're going to be exploring in this session. I'm going to pass over to Bryony now so she can share a bit more about the breadth of what architecture does.
Thanks, Kate. So what does an architect do? So we've just seen a definition, but actually an architect can specialise in a range of fields. So they don't just design buildings. You can have landscape architecture, product design, furniture design, interior design, whole city planning or parts of city planning, and engineering. So we wanted to talk to you a bit about what skills an architect develops, because an architect isn't just born with this. You're not born with a particular skill, you develop them as you go along. So one of the skills that we've got is looking and thinking. Drawing and designing and just kind of playing around with things and ideas. Using maths to plan ideas where it's helpful. You definitely don't have to like maths, and personally myself, I'm really not keen, but sometimes it can be helpful. So that's a skill that you might need to develop if you want to become an architect, but you'll always have people to help you along the way. So another one is using technology to plan and see. So architects might use programs, or they might use something as simple as their phone to sketch out an idea, or a computer screen or something like that. So technology definitely comes in handy. And another skill that architects develop is working with people, so collaborating, so working with teams of people and talking to people, and kind of like bouncing ideas around. And another one is working for people. So architects have clients that they work for in order to design for. So they have to really think about their clients' needs and what they want from the architect. And so we have that here. So that's discussing and changing ideas. So an architect will learn how to discuss with someone else and maybe see where things don't always work and be willing to kind of change ideas as they go along. And then problem solving, which again is something that we need others to do. So an architect will develop the skill of working with others to solve problems, to, for example, if it's a building, it might be to make the building work, to make it work for the client, or just to make it a better design. So I want you to have a little think about this screen and the things that are on there, and have a think about what skills here that you can see that you feel that you already have these skills and that maybe you really enjoy them, but maybe there are some there that you'd like to develop, maybe because you're interested in them or you think it would be important for your future. So yeah, I'm just going to leave that there for 2 seconds for you to have a think about, and then I'll move on. So here we have our next slide, which is the architectural design process. So the architectural design process is really interesting. So an architect gets given a brief. So that might come, Kate, you'll know this better than me, who it comes from. Do you want to just jump in there?
Yeah, sure. So when they get given a brief, it might be anybody that is engaged or basically paying for the project for an architect. So they might get given a project by a local council to design a new swimming pool, or they might get given a brief to design a new extension on somebody's house. It could be anything from kind of small architecture to really big projects. And Bryony, do you mind if I go through this and run?
No, you go for it.
Great. So when you're looking at a brief as an architect, you need to look at what people are asking you to do. What are the key things that I need to ensure that are included in this project to make sure that it works and fits the brief? And you'll always go back to the brief, always go back to the beginning and look at what you're being asked to do. And then your first port of call will be just putting all your ideas down on paper, on your phone, on your computer, just to get all those ideas down and just kind of get those initial thoughts in place. Now, we've put a Post-it note after this one that says feedback. Now, for the architectural design process, it's really important that you always ask for feedback from people. And feedback is about getting support from people around you to make sure that your ideas are the best they can be. So you start getting feedback right from the beginning. It's not like writing a really long essay and then you hand it in right at the end of the year. You get feedback from your first point of ideas. And that's a really good chance to make sure that those ideas are working, that they're really doing the right job and that they're going in the right direction. You might have gotten completely the wrong idea from what the brief was telling you, and actually you need a bit of help to make sure you're pointing yourself in the right direction. So then you go on and use that feedback, make use of that support that you've got from your kind of team as an architect to clarify your ideas. What route am I going to take? Which one of these routes is kind of the best one here and is going to help me get to where I need to go? You then get feedback again. There's always going to be feedback in the architectural design process. It's massively important. Your next step, after you've got that feedback and maybe made some more changes to make sure it really works, is you start then, only then after all those steps, do you start making some really detailed plans in place. So for an architect, that might look like making a model like out of card or paper. It might mean like making a really detailed drawing. It might mean making a 3D model on the computer. And then you get feedback again from your client, and they tell you whether there's anything they'd like to change. If you need to change things, you need to go back and change it, and then you get to the build. As an architect, you're never going to go all the way from the brief straight to the build. You can't do that. You need all those steps between and that feedback and the support of your team to make sure you get to the build. Now, the reason I've talked about that is because I've kind of put it as an architectural design process, but I also think it can be something you apply to your life, whether you're an architect or not. I think it's really important that you can use this process to help you get where you want to go. So at the bottom here, I've put a kind of architectural design process to help you solve other problems. And this is something, if you want to take a screen grab now or take a photo with your phone, it might be useful for you to kind of help make strategies in your life using this process. So at the beginning, you might get asked to do something. What am I being asked to do? You might be getting a brief, or it might be something you're setting for yourself. For example, I want to go and apply for something, or I want a job, or that kind of thing. You're thinking about what your brief is at the beginning. Then you start writing down your quick ideas, just quickly noting down. They don't need to be perfect. Then you take your ideas to someone who's there to support you. That might be a care worker, or it might be a friend, it might be a family member. You go to that person, ask what do you think about this? Which one of these do you think? Have you got any ideas, like which one do you think is a good idea? You talk it through with them. You choose something that you're going to focus on. You use that feedback to clarify your ideas, and you start creating a bit more of a plan. Then you go and get feedback again. What do you think about this plan? Then you create a plan of action, which is kind of like the problem-solving version of doing a model or a render or a drawing as an architect. You're putting all the details in place, all the steps that you need to put in, and act like a to-do list, like a plan of action. Then get feedback again. What do you think about this plan of action? Is it going to work? Do I need to change something? And then you can get started. So we think it's a really good process for just applying to anything. So you don't need to be an architect to use this design process, but we think it's really handy. Yeah, there we go. Sorry.
So now we've got something quite fun for you. So we wanted to do an architectural activity with you. So we want you to think of yourself as the architect, now that you've learned a bit about the skills that they develop and their process. So let's have a think about our client. So our client is the person or people who will be using the building. And in this instance, it's John. So John is a 39-year-old teacher. He enjoys the outdoors and extreme sports. He uses a wheelchair and he lives on his own, but he has a very busy social life and he likes to have big dinner parties with all his friends. So the use of the building that we want you to design for is we want you to design a home for John. So we don't want you to overthink it. We don't want to spend too much time on this. But if you've got some materials like a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen, if you could just grab those and spend 30 seconds to a minute just thinking about what a home for John could look like. So we'll just give you that time there.
And make sure whilst you're doing that, so remember in the architectural design process, this is your initial ideas. It doesn't have to be a beautiful finished drawing. It's literally just writing down your ideas. So think whilst you're looking at John, what does he need to have in his house? What's important for him? What hobbies does he have? Maybe thinking about, you know, what spaces need to be in his home? How does he get around his home? All of those things are really important. And he's a 39-year-old who might seem really old to you, but he's not a really old man. So he's going to want a space that fits him as a person. So really think about him and a home. What do you need in a home that's important in a home? So really quickly, you can pause the video if you need a bit more time, and then we'll carry on. Right, let's carry on to the next slide.
Yeah. So now we've introduced a third thing. So we've got location. So this is where the building and John will be. So we want to think about this in terms of, you know, sometimes circumstances can really change our initial ideas and our plans. So you might have sketched out a home for John and now you realize, oh no, he's going to be in a snowy mountainside in Sweden. So that's just not going to work. So thinking about some of the, you know, thinking and looking and just jotting down ideas, those kind of skills, we want you to spend another 30 seconds to a minute just sort of planning for this new circumstance, which is the fact that John will be in a remote snowy mountainside in Sweden. So again, you can pause the video and then we'll come back. So hopefully now you've done a couple of drawings and you've really sketched them out and you've just gone through it, which is absolutely brilliant. And we just want to say what a massive well done, because hopefully now that you can see that some of the architectural skills that you learned about earlier, that you've actually put them into practice and you've done them. So some of those looking and thinking skills and sketching out ideas and going back to the drawing board and thinking, oh, that's not going to work, I'll go back. So these are really, really brilliant skills. And so well done. I'll move on to our next slide. So we've got a couple of things to think about. So sort of, you know, if you want to find out more about architecture and developing architectural skills, there's a couple of ways in which you can get in contact with us. So we have our learning at riba.org email address. And we wanted to let you know that you, thinking back about that feedback, you can always email us if you want some feedback, even if it's just on your drawings today or just general ideas. We can be one of those port of calls for you. You can also ask us about work experiences and architect practices. So do you want to say a bit about that, Kate?
Yeah, so we offer work experience in architect practices, 14-year-old, and we can help find a placement, find a practice, an architecture studio that can host you if that is something you're really interested in following. I always say that work experience is really important for a career. It's something that sets you apart. And it gives you a really good chance to understand if it's the place you want to be, because sometimes you go to work experience and you think, this isn't for me, this is not the right place, but sometimes it's really interesting and inspiring to have a go at work experience. So I'm sure Ellen can give you a bit more detail if that's something you're interested in after the session. And also, if you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at RIBA Learning, so we post about all the projects we run there.
Yeah. And that's the end of our presentation, Helen.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bryony and Kate. That was, I think you packed a huge amount of information into that short session. And I hope that everybody who's followed along with the activity has some amazing sketches, some early ideas. I thought it was really interesting how you talked in detail about the architectural process, and I hope that it will be useful for those people participating in the session to think about how the architectural process may actually be of use for people looking to set their own targets. So using the people that you've got around you to test your ideas with, learning from their feedback and taking the next step forwards in terms of your pathway into your next maybe training opportunity or a career opportunity as well. So please do make use of the network that has been extended to you in this session. Email the lovely learning team at the RIBA, send your drawings, get some feedback. This is something that you can talk about if you have interviews with training providers or with potentially somebody who might hire you to do a job. And obviously, I think we've talked about the fact that architectural skills don't necessarily need to only be of use to someone who wants to become an architect. Although if you do fancy doing that, there's, as the team's mentioned, there's loads of information about potential work experience placements. And I know that there is somebody in Norfolk specifically working on work experience as well. So hopefully you can get in contact with your advisor who might be able to hook you up with an amazing work experience opportunity in the world of architecture. And then just another point on social media. Any type of social media platform, from TikTok through to Instagram to Twitter, not only the RIBA, but there are plenty of creative opportunities to learn more about architecture, even looking at photography as well. So loads of really useful resources for you to think more about how architecture and architectural thinking might benefit you in the future. So that's all from this Careers Pick and Mix session. We hope you found it useful. Look forward to hopefully seeing some of your drawings and sketches. But for now, thanks everybody.